unfair, very out of place.
All right, welcome back to the Have Not Room. I'm Ben, and joined here as always by Chad and Brian, and we are here to talk about Week 3 of Big Brother 23. But, before we get into Week 3, as we usually do, let's take a very, short detour into Week 2, where we saw the departure of Frenchie. Brandon French is his real name. And we talk a little bit about the Wednesday and Thursday episodes, just to get that out of the way. We talked about most of the important stuff last week, but Chad, what were your thoughts on the Wednesday episode and the comp, the sunscreen SPF 50 comp or whatever?
Yeah, I remember. I forget. I think Hannah played in it, right? I remember one of them. I think it was Hannah had a really good strategy. And like what I thought I would do if I was there, and like watching the pattern and picking out the one that spurts the most and just like hanging under that one and just like going back and forth with it. So I think it was Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean obviously she didn't win it, but I don't know, someone had a really good strategy in that, but overall that comp was interesting. I feel like this season they're bringing out like a lot of different comps and different styles, at least that we haven't seen recently. So I thought it was a cool comp.
Yeah, definitely a unique comp. I think that you said that. Like the comps this season have been definitely different than the usual ones that we've seen. Like we did see the HOH kind of a more standard booth style true or false comp, but otherwise the like more physical kind of comps definitely seem more kind of like crapshooty or like kind of weird skill variant rather than like some kind of pure endurance or pure physical strength. What are your thoughts on the Wednesday and Thursday episodes and comps, Brian? Because there's not much to talk about beyond that for last week.
Yeah, no, I thought it was funny. Like nobody just took a second to chill and just be like, all right, what is the pattern before running left and right and slipping. Like you would think the first thing you do is like, let me watch a cycle, see what happens, and then but no one did that. Everyone too amped up to play, so can't really blame them. I guess I'm sure the adrenaline's going pretty hard. Good for Derek winning his second veto. Top beast.
2 for 2
now. 2 for 2 now, an ace up people's sleeves, so good for him.
Yeah, that is something that I think was covered on the Wednesday episode. Was it the Wednesday episode, or wasn't it not until Sunday that they covered the Royal Flush? I think it was the Wednesday episode, right?
I know they went into depth on the Sunday episode.
Yeah, it was Sunday.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that then after. That line said had formed the previous week, but it didn't really become necessary to talk about it until this week.
Right.
But yeah, after that, we see Brittany give her rap speech. Definitely.
Less cringe than I was expecting. For about like 2 minutes, or for however long it was between her being like, I'm going to do this on the episode, to her actually doing it. I was just like sitting there like holding my stomach, like I'm so ready for this to be so uncomfortable. And you know what? Better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I would definitely hope that she doesn't do it again. We'll see if she does, but it could have been worse for sure.
Yeah, the rate we're going, it's just going to be week after week of raps on the block. Gonna be great.
Just getting.
Go ahead. That'll be her album name, On the Block. Every song is a different week.
Yeah. Yeah, week 2, week 3, week 4. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fine. I mean, I think it was more annoying for me throughout the week to have to watch her practice it and like constantly talk about the plan, because it was such a preconceived situation that Frenchie was going to be going home. So she was just instead of spending all week campaigning, she was spending all week practicing her rap. But yeah, and then we see Frenchie leave the house, as Julie said like 3 or 4 times. A very classy exit. Yeah. What's there to say about Frenchie? What's your final thoughts here on Frenchie as a Big Brother player and character, Chad?
I think he thinks he's a lot better than he is.
Yeah.
Like the way he was talking, he's like, I want other Big Brother players in the future to look at my game and like emulate it. I'm like, why would they?
Well.
Like it was, you overplayed, you made way too many promises. I mean, maybe like your only final two with Derek F was probably the only real one that he actually stayed loyal to, and just I don't know. He's a good guy, I'm sure. I didn't watch the feeds enough, but he's presented as a really great, where a lot can come in and want to do all these amazing moves that they've seen their favorites do, and then they just can't do it because it's hard. It's different in the house than it is, just watching. But yeah, I think it's the case of Frenchie. Overplayed, but good guy overall.
Yeah, you got any thoughts, Brian?
I mean, what more is there to say than what we said last week? I think they did him a great service by not including any of his savior complex rants on the edit of the show. I thought that was very uncomfortable to watch on the feeds and in clips circulating Twitter. He just wasn't very good. I also saw a funny thing where he was like, I hope I get a second shot at this game. I would have been so good if there weren't a bunch of meatheads in the house, and then the feed just cut super abruptly.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not going to get a second chance at this game.
That was what I was going to bring up, is you don't think that the only reason he lost was because they put a bunch of meatheads in the cast with them? That's what he thinks.
I mean, God bless him.
Yeah.
What's that other, bless his heart?
Yeah, bless his heart, yeah.
Yeah, he's no good. I'm kind of glad he's gone, so we can move on to more interesting things for the season.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what the season has been so far, is we're kind of finding the pieces that can be removed while still having this very interesting dynamic that's kind of broiling up to the surface. This kind of Cold War building up. So yeah, definitely probably a necessary casualty to that. And I think that he was more entertaining than most second boots in terms of bringing content. Yeah, so yeah, I'd say probably him and Devin are up there.
Was Devin a second boot? Or
Devin was a second boot, right?
I thought he was third.
I feel like he was around a little longer.
So he was the second HOH, right?
I thought that Derek won the second HOH, and then that was the week he took out Devin. But I could be wrong. It definitely felt like Devin was around longer than 2 weeks. But so did Frenchie, to be fair. It felt like he was around for a month.
I think it was Joey Piola, whatever her name was, Paula. I think she went by, and then Devin.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Regardless, Frenchie's gone, and we move on to week 3. We have our Tom Green, somewhat hosted, I guess, not really hosted, but involved competition where he just has these awkward interviews on the streets of Ottawa, where people who, some of them might have been familiar with the concept of Big Brother. There is a Big Brother Canada that we do cover, so they have their own version of the show, and the American version does air there. But and we have true or false questions about this, and at the very end we see multiple people throwing in the final round after Whitney was eliminated, and Xavier somewhat accidentally winning this HOH.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I liked it. Felt very, Tom Green show from back in the day. This is what he would do, just run around the streets of Canada, ask people questions, do pranks, I like to think that he just never stopped. He may not be recording throughout the intervening years, but Tom Green is on the streets, and he's going to ask you questions about stuff and make references to Kato Kalin and showmances.
Yeah, definitely more airtime towards discussion of Celebrity Big Brother US 2 than I would expect from a season that seemingly caused CBS to cancel the celebrity version of the show.
Which is so silly because it was a good season.
It was definitely a wild and entertaining season from the standpoint of must-watch TV. Definitely not a fun and happy season, no.
So, I mean, this means that we're getting Celebrity Big Brother 3, right?
One can only hope. But yeah, Chad, do you have any thoughts on the HOH or some of the strategy? We definitely are aware 100%, and this was confirmed even in the edit on Sunday, that Derek X and Hannah both threw the competition the round after Whitney was eliminated, because everybody in the house had an understanding that either Brent or Whitney were going to be the target coming into this week, probably Brent. So because Derek X and Hannah are on the Aces team with Brent and Whitney, they have to not win HOH, otherwise Brent would be safe. So what are your thoughts on the competition and this kind of collective throwing at the end that left Xavier with the win because he didn't know which one was the correct answer, so he guessed?
Yeah, I think now knowing that Brent was the target from the get-go, I think they executed that very well. And the question that everyone threw on was a really easy answer. The rest of it kind of oh god, who knows what color the third girl was, her dress was.
Mm-hmm.
But that answer was oh, this is super easy. So I think it's a really good strategy going in for that team, and it's something I brought up very early when I was talking about how the teams, how you could strategize where oh, you want someone on your team out, just throw the comp.
Mm-hmm.
And then whoever's HOH, you just hey, vote this guy out. And then they did it in veto too, and I think the veto, we'll talk about, they did that pretty well, although it was pretty obvious even to someone like Brittany. But yeah, no, I think it was perfect strategy for the week. It should be an easy week, but obviously not with emotions.
Oh yeah.
As we see.
Yeah, no, for sure. We kind of went into this in terms of what the team twist is really bringing to this season, where it's there's a lot of relationships that are built heavily around the structure of the teams, and the teams are relatively loyal to each other compared to what you might expect just from basically randomly created teams. But then you also have these situations where people are strategically kind of throwing things to target people on their own team. And yeah, we have our new HOH here in Xavier, and yeah, definitely, he's my winner pick. I'm happy he's kind of coming out from the shadows here a little bit. He had a very quiet first 2 weeks, and now he's kind of getting his hands dirty a little bit. And the Kings team is safe. Sarah Beth, Christian, and Alyssa are all safe. And so now we head into what the plan is for this week, where we have our newest majority alliance. It's formed from the ashes of the slaughterhouse, the Royal Flush Alliance, which is the 3 queens that are left, the 4 kings, and Derek X, who's their ace up their sleeve. Brian, what are your thoughts on this kind of grouping that's come together here?
It's good for everyone involved. I don't love giant alliances, so I was kind of hoping that with the slaughterhouse dying, we weren't going to immediately form into a new one. Makes me a little nervous. Like the bomb squad getting, destroyed and then coming back as, was it the detonators or whatever? A lot of BB-16 talk tonight. Yeah, I don't necessarily want that. So, it's good for all the players involved. But I'm a little surprised Hannah's not a part of it, or a bigger part of it. Maybe she is more in real life than they're projecting in it. But, yeah. No. Not.
We'll talk about Hannah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a little nervous in the sense that it's oh God, are we just going to get another giant alliance going? But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I I'm a little bit more cautiously optimistic about that not being the case, especially with some of the plans in the next couple of weeks that we'll get to after we get through the Brent saga here. Because the thing about this season and these players, as opposed to something like the Bomb Squad, the Detonators, and BB16, is that the majority of the players in the season are very, very self-interested and like very, very willing to do like whatever is in like their clear best self-interest at any point in time. And for some people in this alliance, that's going to be, you know, setting up for the alliance to crumble in, you know, as soon as next week. So
that's what I like to hear.
So
let's go.
Yeah, that's like the good thing about casting people who are like game players who are going to like play hard and play selfishly, is that they're not going to settle for a position where they're like coasting to like a 7th or 8th place. So this is our new core structure. We also have 2 alliances that are basically fake but are important for the blind side on Brent this week that weren't shown in the show. The Radicals, which is the 4 aces plus the 4 kings, and the Mafia, which is the 4 aces plus the 3 queens. And in Brent's mind, the Mafia is real, and in Whitney's mind as well, to an extent, the Mafia is real, but without Brent. And the Radicals is the fake alliance. In both of the minds of the kings and the queens, these are alliances that they've already told each other about.
Be in alliance with them.
I mean, okay, here's the thing about the Jokers, right? And we'll get to like kind of the plans moving forward, but there are, after Brent leaves, there will be 5 people left in the game who have yet to win a competition, and 3 of those 5 people are the 3 Jokers. So when you're not winning competitions, you're not really demonstrating value to people in terms of allies. That's just kind of the thing. And we also have Brittany here, who Xavier is going to end up putting up again for the 2nd week in a row as somebody who may end up being a pawn for the foreseeable future. So all on top of that, the Jokers don't really socialize very heavily. Azza especially, and then Big D to a lesser extent, tend to keep to themselves in that back room alone. They're seen as emotionally volatile for a number of reasons, and not, you know, rational game players in many senses. Big D has done a little bit this past week to change that, but it's still, the Jokers are not seen as people that are good long-term allies for a number of reasons.
Winner pick, man. I don't know.
I did say Big D is the best positioned of the 3 Jokers, I would say right now. But it's kind of
healthiest person in the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we have Xavier. He's going to come up with kind of a wild plan here to target Brent, but because there is this radical situation and then also this like remnants of the slaughterhouse that is not a thing, but for people like Brent and then like people like even like Whitney and Big D is being used as a pacifier basically. Right. He's going to tell Brent, I'm going to target somebody that you want me to target. That's Brittany, basically, because Brent has been pushing for Azza and Brittany to be targeted. And I'm going to use you as a pawn. What are your thoughts on this plan, Chad?
I think knowing his goal, Brent was very verbally against it, and he's kind of aware, like, hey, if I'm on the block, I know I'm a threat, I'm going to go home. Mm-hmm. I think he's so oblivious to the fact that he's the target that it's unbelievable even to this point. Mm-hmm. It's like, so I guess it's a decent plan knowing Xavier's goal is to keep him calm to some degree. Just be like, hey, you're a pawn, but it's also like, obviously that's like what you would do to your target. I think maybe if he like backdoored it might be better, but that's also taking a chance. I don't know the veto result or if they've even played it yet.
Yeah, the veto's been played and the veto ceremony has happened, yes. We'll talk about that.
Okay. But, I mean, if Brent is still sitting on the block post veto, he's gone for sure. But, I don't know. I think a backdoor could have been a better option. But, I mean, it's not a bad plan. I mean, you have a target on the block. I think putting Brittany up is probably the good play. Easy pawn. I mean, obviously pissed Ozza off to no end. And, I mean, we got plenty to say about Ozza, like, begging to go up, basically. So Brittany doesn't cry for a week. But, like, if Brittany knows the goal, then who cares? Like Brent would go 10 times out of 10 over Brittany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we will talk about Ozza and Brittany and all that, but Brian, what are your thoughts here? Because let's just set the stage here. We're gonna get to the wild card in the Sunday episode stuff and Ozza and Brittany and all that, but just to put everything on the table, the veto has been played. It was a bowl arena style veto. Christian won the veto and did not use it. And from Brent's perspective, he is now basically, his view of the situation is the Kings have betrayed him and the Kings are actually targeting him. So people like Xavier and Christian are feeding him BS, and this whole pawn thing was a setup, basically. However, Brent thinks that he still has the Queens in the Mafia, and he will still have the votes because 6 votes is all he needs. So between the 3 queens and his 3 teammates, he still thinks he's going to win a 6-5 vote, I believe. Potentially even 7-4, because he thinks that he might even get Alyssa. So Brent thinks that the Kings turned on the Radicals Alliance and are targeting him, but he has outsmarted them by also having a secondary Mafia alliance with the Queens. Obviously, none of this is true, and he's going to be voted out unanimously on Thursday. But that's where we're at. So with that in mind, Brian, what do you think about Xavier's plans, and what do you think about how it's played out so far?
Well, I mean, he's going to get the target he wants out of the house, so yeah. It's been a successful play. I think it's funny that he was like, oh, I need to make him feel like he's a pawn, and then there's like the scene of him being like, I need you to be pawn. He's like, no, thank you. It's like, yeah, but I really need you to be. He's like, no, definitely not. And then she just nominates him anyways.
Yeah,
that was pretty great. He should have probably realized the writing was on the wall at that point when your supposed ally, asks you to be a pawn, and you're like, I'm not comfortable with it, and they're like, well, it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, they really made it clear on the episode on Sunday that Brent has zero awareness of where he stands relative to the other house guests. He very much thinks like he's a cool, charming, Cody 2.0 type character, like everyone likes him, whatever. And that could not be further from the truth. I mean, you even have a scene of Whitney being like, he's annoying. Like, I can't really stand him.
Yeah.
Hannah is pretty just straight up creeped out by him. He said some pretty unfortunate stuff that made it into the episode, like men and women can't be friends without like there being something more there. And he also said that there's a lot of literature about that you could go read, so that's good. And yeah, he just has no idea what his standing is at all, and it should make for a fun Thursday vote. If anything, they should just try to make it 6-5.
In the opposite direction?
In the opposite direction. So that Julie could be like, in a vote of 6-5, Brittany, you are safe. Brent, you've been evicted.
Oh,
like, that would be just the icing on the cake. I doubt they'll do that. It'll probably just be a straightforward vote. They wouldn't want to risk it.
Yeah.
They don't want to get too cute. Just a tragedy of a player, Brent is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. 'Cause we talked about this a little bit, over text and stuff. But the edit before Sunday night had been very, very kind to Brent, like extraordinarily kind, because this is not new information or new opinions. Like, this is stuff that's been brewing since week 1, and
they tried to make it seem like him and Hannah were like on the verge of a showman.
Yeah.
And then like it's match cut to Hannah being like, I hate him so much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was very odd.
Yeah, and as someone who's like not, I don't watch the feeds nearly as much as Benny here, but like I even said in the text, like, Brent was kind of growing on me. Like, I was starting to like be like, okay, like maybe he could be someone like cool in the house. But then like after Sunday, I was like, oh Jesus Christ, get this guy out of here.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of like the early days of Survivor when they kept trying to cast people who were kind of like Kobe, and none of them were anything like him. Like, you got like the Silas Gaithers of the world, who's just like evil Kobe. It just never really worked out. And I guess they do like that more like recently with like the Malcolm Joe Anglem archetype. Like, they just keep trying to reclaim the magic, and they were like, all right, good looking Italian dude from Jersey, people will love him, he'll be Cody too, and he is not.
Then they'll win the circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't be promoting our rivals, Chad.
I mean, look, Joey Sasso is actually charming and funny and entertaining. But yeah, I mean, it was odd, and it was something that I noticed and pointed out during like the conversations that they showed on the episodes of Brent talking to Derek X, where on the feeds it was like 10 times more condescending and like douchey, and they like basically edited it to make it look like Brent was like just giving like sage advice to Derek for his best interests or whatever, and then like the showman stuff and like the flirting was definitely shown in a very one-sided way, or a very like rose-colored glasses kind of way, and a lot of the things that he had been saying in the house that were a little bit douchey and misogynistic had definitely not shown up until it was clear that he was basically on his way out the door. So yeah, very weird way that they've decided to edit Brent, but it's not that big of a deal, because the Sunday episode definitely did a number on him, and I assume the Wednesday and Thursday as well will continue that trend.
I would imagine.
And make him look like a real fucking idiot walking out the door thinking that he's staying.
We talked about Frenchie. Sorry, you go, Chad.
Said his head is definitely in the clouds. The other flight attendant pun we've heard 1,000 times.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about Frenchie probably staying off social media in his best interest. I think he's another one who should probably stay off.
I think media. Over 90% of Big Brother players leaving the house should stay off of social media.
That's fair.
It's usually not going to be a positive experience in the whole. Even if the majority of the fan base does like you, there's still going to be vocal psychos who are going to harass you. So.
Yeah, I'll just say this, and like probably everyone who like heavily participates in Big Brother Twitter, probably, and maybe especially including myself, are all fucking unhinged.
Yeah.
Just the stuff I see on a daily basis is just so out of pocket by people.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, that's why Big Brother Twitter loves like Tiffany and Hannah, though. It's because they also, like Hannah especially, is extremely blunt and like will say like very mean things straight to people's faces in just a very blunt, matter of fact way, with like zero fucks given. So
Hannah, you better not come back for another season and be in control, though, because they will flip on your ass for that.
Well, I mean, Tiffany's in control right now, and she's still well liked. So
that's true. Tiffany, I think, is a little like funnier. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the stuff she says, the edge is taken off.
Yeah,
she's pretty funny.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it comes down to like if you're seen as somebody that's likable or like an underdog or a fan favorite, and you're saying the mean things that are somewhat funny about the people that are, worse than you, then Twitter will like that. Like, Hannah saying, snarky and mean things about Brent is funny because Hannah is an underdog and is likable, and Brent is extremely unlikable. So, it works.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't imagine it'll be the same reception if they were saying about, Kyland. It seems like just like a sweet, nice dude.
Yeah.
If people were saying mean shit about him, I think people would not think that's cool.
Yeah. All right, let's quickly go over the rest of the Sunday episode, and then we'll get into the future, because there's a lot of stuff going on for the future, because this week has been over for days, basically. As soon as Christian won the veto, the second Christian won the veto, the week was over, and they all started planning for the next week or two. So we see on the episode, we have the wild card competition. We see Brittany, Tiffany, and Derek X compete, and Derek X and Tiffany agree beforehand that Tiffany should be the winner of this competition because they don't want Derek X to be put into a position where he might accidentally have Brent be saved, and they don't want Brittany to win safety because X is essentially thinking of using her as a pawn, which he ultimately does. So it's a competition that, funnily enough, you can team up on somebody. And Tiffany and Derek X openly team up against Brittany. Brittany gets knocked out first, and then Derek X essentially lets Tiffany win. Chad, what were your thoughts on this strategy and the fallout that happened here? Because obviously we've seen a lot of emotional responses from Brittany in terms of her being used as a pawn now 2 weeks in a row, and now kind of being teamed up on by somebody. Let's be clear, the Kingslayers in Brittany's mind is still a real thing. The Kingslayers being the Brittany, Ozza, Claire, Tiffany, All Girls Alliance that's kind of fallen by the wayside. So that is playing into the reason why people like Ozza and Brittany are seeing this as such a, a slight by Tiffany here. But what are your thoughts on how this whole situation played out, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect comp for them to get what they want out of it. I think it was smart to just gun for Brittany, get her out. I mean, they made it incredibly obvious to the point where Brittany was realizing it during the comp. It did really annoy me that Brittany couldn't do very simple math and just had to replace literally any number.
Under pressure, she's getting ganged up on.
Yeah.
Come on, though. I was like, good lord.
To be fair, all three of them during the competition had instances where they did it wrong. Obviously, Derek X was trying to throw it, so it makes sense for him to be doing the math wrong.
Yeah.
But there were multiple instances where all three of them messed up on the math. And it's basic first grade arithmetic, so there's very little excuse.
I get how you could, and I mean, who knows? All three of us probably would too, but
exactly.
But still, I'm like, that's bad when you really know oh, my game's on the line, and in Brittany's eyes, she's going up for sure, and with possibility of going home, it's just you can't count to 13. But I don't know. I think they executed the comp pretty well. The fallout of it, especially with Ozza, was interesting and made me lose a little faith in Ozza, but I also get it from being a person. If you're there, the house is 100% Brent's going home. I get why Ozza would say, well, just put me up then if I know I'm safe. I think it's kind of dumb of anyone to want to go on the block. I mean, this is maybe the one scenario where it's okay, I get it, and it wouldn't probably 9 times out of 10 be fine with that, unless the house flips for whatever reason, which has happened. But I mean, I get wanting to keep Brittany calm, but I mean, she's just so pushed down to the bottom of this house that, even her being upset, any retaliation she does, it's not going to amount to anything unless she can win a comp. And I don't know. I think it's a long road for Brittany, especially now, socially and comp wise. But one comp and she's back in it. So
yeah, well, I mean,
one HOH.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the. I mean, she said every single comp. This comp is hers though, and it's been not great so far. Not great performances.
I don't have much. I don't have much faith in the Karate Kid, but you do.
Yeah, as far as Azza goes, it's very rare that you see somebody on Big Brother who I would say is like too kind for Big Brother. But in my opinion, I think Azza is too kind for Big Brother. And usually the reason it's not an issue is because usually if you're very kind, that translates to you having a good social game, people liking you, and just like that naturally landing you in a good position within the house structure, even if you're not like cutthroat enough to make the moves when they have to be made. But Azza is both like too kind to the point where she's volunteering for like a second tier ally of hers to not go on the block again, and on top of that, she's not in a great social positioning. So Azza has dropped a lot in terms of my personal expectations of her for this game. I don't know. What are your thoughts on all this, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I get her being like, Brittany was just on the block. Like, it's not. There's no such thing as fair in Big Brother. We always say that, but like, we don't need to put her through that again. Spread the wealth around. It doesn't make any sense for Xavier to spread it around. Like, it doesn't them at all to. You just got to keep putting the person who's become the pawn on the block. That's just how it works. So yeah, like you said, it probably doesn't bode well for her long-term game, unless maybe next week Brittany gets put up again and she just it's like fuck this. Yeah. I'm gonna just go crazy and start flipping the house around or something. But I also don't see that side of her from everything we've seen so far.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, we'll see. I think the main issue here is just that Brittany and Azza are making emotional pleas to players who are very single-mindedly, strategically focused and strategically thinking, and that's just never going to work, right? You can't make somebody do something that's against their best strategic influence with an emotional plea, unless they're also a very emotional player, which Xavier is not, and Christian is not with the veto.
Right.
So yeah, it's just they have to really adjust their gameplay here if they want to get anywhere. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this week. Like we said, Brent is going, and that's not going to change. There's no effort at all right now for that to change. It was briefly brought up as an idea by Tiffany, but it was kind of as a just as running every single scenario sort of thing, and it got no traction at all.
Right.
So
why would you?
Yeah.
Brent has a chance at winning comps at least, so why would you even bother?
Yeah. So in lieu of that, this week has been a lot of setup for the rest of the game, and in particular the next week or two. So we saw a few more alliances formed. We saw the Connect, which is the final two that Kyland and Tiffany have formed, with the mutual understanding that they each have that each other is the best player in the house besides themselves. Because right now, Kyland and Tiffany are definitely the best two players right now. Mm-hmm. It's not even close. It's Kyland and Tiffany are 1 and 2 in some order, and that's a huge gap before the next player comes into effect, in my opinion. So they've realized that, and they're working towards mutual benefit for now. And then we have the Detectives Alliance, which is Kyland and Tiffany plus Claire and Derek X, which is half of the Royal Flush Alliance that does not include the Kings. And they've talked about multiple options for a fifth for this. They've talked about X, they've talked about SB, and they've talked about Hannah as potential fifths for this alliance, but none of that has really matriculated yet. And that's pretty much it in terms of important alliances. There are other relationships that have started to form, but that's kind of the power core of the game right now. And then also on top of that, a lot of what is going to be discussed in the coming weeks is around the cookout, right? Because I mentioned that like Azza is like floundering in the game, but she does have the out right now that one, she is not seen as a target or like a threat in the near future, and two, she has the cookout who is still somewhat defending her, at least in the short term. And we had a conversation that happened today where Kylan and Tiffany talked about how far they want to take the cookout and how far they realistically can take the cookout. And they basically came to the conclusion that they just want to get the cookout to jury, and at that point, that's all they can really accomplish realistically because of the way that everybody else is playing. Because Big D is playing very selfishly, Azza is playing very emotionally, Hannah is not really being brought in any of the conversations that are happening and is being seen as a target. So that's kind of where we stand right now, where the main goal right now is Kylan and Tiffany are working to get their people to jury and trying to figure out who the next two boots should be in some order. With that being said, one of those boots is likely to be Whitney, whether it be next week or the week after. It seems like, though, the queens in total, Kylan and Tiffany, and then also Claire came in this conversation, do not want Whitney to go next week. And the reason for that is they want a shot to be taken at Christian and Melissa, who, as we've seen in the show, have become like a legitimate showmance now. They're like actually a real showmance. They're a real couple. They're making out on the feeds.
Everybody at Frenchie was crazy. Week one.
The one thing Frenchie accidentally got right.
On Twitter, coming his way.
I mean, when you throw
got mad.
Yeah. So
when you throw 100 darts at a dartboard, one's gonna hit, right?
Yeah, broken clock sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's Frenchie.
So this is the plan, basically, from Kylan and Tiffany, who are essentially, as I said, they're basically running the game right now, the two of them. They are trying to create a situation where one of the three jokers or somebody like Whitney or Hannah are able to win this upcoming HOH and take a shot at the Kings, specifically Christian and Melissa. And then the following week, one of the Kings who are left over, maybe if Christian were to survive and Alyssa were to be taken out, somebody like Christian would win and then take a shot back at somebody like Whitney or Brittany. That's the ideal scenario right now for Kylan and Tiffany. And this definitely diverges from the previous plan that had been set out by the Royal Flush as a whole, which was for Whitney to be the consensus target going into next week. This has kind of been set into effect by Kylan talking to Xavier. This ended up accidentally leaking to Christian, so Christian now doesn't trust Kylan anymore, that he and the Queens do not want to win the HOH because they would feel compelled to take a shot at the Kings, and so they are going to throw the HOH. And then also on top of this, we have Tiffany working very hard on people like Brittany, on people like Whitney, on people like Azza, to make sure, in Big D also to an extent, to make sure that all of them are pointed firmly at Christian and Melissa, and that at least one of them, if not the pair of them, hits the block next week, if possible. So that's the short-term goal. What are you? Any thoughts before we dig deeper?
If we can pull this off, that would be amazing. That'd be like Littlefinger-esque, if, completely walk away like, oh man, I had nothing to do with it, while actually pulling all the strings. That would be amazing. I doubt they'll be able to pull it off just because it has to rely on a lot of things to go right in very specific ways. For instance, just like Christian winning HOH next week would, kind of torpedo this. I mean, he probably would just have him target Whitney, and then Whitney would go, but then how do you target the showmance without getting any blood on your hands? If they can pull it off, though, honestly, that would be one of those things that are in, YouTubers' top BB moves ever type situations.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they have that plan says a lot. I think that alone puts them leagues above this house. But no, I mean, with Kylan as my pick, that sounds amazing.
Like, hell yeah.
Like, hell yeah. I think it's pretty achievable. I mean, the team's twist could be a wild card in this whole thing. So, I mean, if things go right, I think it's totally achievable. Getting the cookout specifically to jury, I think, is kind of the most important factor of it. Because I feel like the cookout just being, based on the reason they're all together to begin with, I think, they would all probably vote for one of them to win regardless, unless there's like a real betrayal. But I don't know. I think if 5 of the 6 members of the cookout are in the jury, and one of them, if not 2, are final 2, I think whoever that is wins.
Yeah.
Like, hands down.
Yeah.
But I hope it's Kylan.
I think that's the logic here from Kylan and Tiffany. They're like trying to basically maximize the value of the cookout while being realistic about the fact that some of the players in the cookout are not really working towards their ends in like a really helpful way. And so they're like, okay, if we can just get them to jury, if one of the cookout is in the final 2, then the other 5 are in the jury, then that should be theoretically a win, right? That's the idea. So like they're content at the very least with at least getting the 6 of them to jury.
Ironically, I think. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
Ironically, I think X is the only one that would maybe catch on and like rat him out, but I don't know. Maybe.
I think
out of the alliance, I think X is probably the other most self-interested one.
I think it's probably Big D. But that's
or
fine.
Big D. But,
but yeah.
I still think Big D has the pieces in place to.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, Big D would have to 1 win comps and 2 like have serious social pull, in which neither of those seem to be the case at this point. So
yeah, X is a little more realistic.
But yeah, I think that this is a good kind of realization agreement that Kylan and Tiffany have come to, because that is really the one thing that is holding them back as players. Is if they were insistent on trying to get the cookout to the final 6 or something like that, it would not work, and it would basically they would basically go down with that ship, and it would kind of sink their games, in my opinion. But this is a realistic goal, and I think they've kind of measured this in a way that makes sense. But yeah, this is something you mentioned though, Brian. What happens if Christian or Alyssa win this HOH, right? So theoretically, you said Whitney should be the target, right? Whitney was the consensus target that the Royal Flush had come to. However, there's been a lot of talk recently about Hannah.
Oh boy.
And
what did Hannah do?
There's a number of reasons why Hannah is being looked at by the Kings other than Xavier. Even Sarah Beth, to an extent, is looking towards Hannah as a potential target. One, she is very, very smart and knowledgeable about Big Brother, and she puts 0 effort into hiding that. 2, other than Derek X, she has very few people who she's close to. And with Derek X, they have been flirting somewhat openly, not to the extent that Alyssa and Christian have been, obviously, but they're kind of becoming somewhat of a known pair. And a lot of people are also very afraid of what Derek X can do in this game if he gets more power. Sure. And then third, Derek X has been trying to put in work with the Kings and the Queens to protect Whitney and Hannah coming out of this week, saying that he can get them to go after the Jokers, basically. But that's not true, first of all. And the Kings and Queens don't buy that. The Queens don't care because they know that they're going after the Kings, and the Kings 100% do not buy it. I think that Christian and Alyssa at this point are pretty well aware that Hannah and Whitney would go after them if given the opportunity. So with that in mind, the planned nominations for Christian, Alyssa, and even potentially SB at this point are Hannah and Whitney, with Hannah being the expected target of the HOH. However, this now puts the cookout and the queens in a very, very precarious situation where the presumed HOH, in this instance, would be openly wanting Hannah to be the person eliminated, but people like Kyland and Tiffany and the Jokers and Derek X and even Claire are going to want to save Hannah and get out Whitney instead. So that would be a very, very, very messy situation if that were to occur.
No, please. Please.
I used to say that would definitely be what happens, but I'm so numb to like it. I'm just like, okay, this is all very interesting.
Yeah.
And since it's very interesting, it's not going to happen because U.S. Big Brother can't be interested anymore. But hey, we'll hope.
Well, that's the thing. There is almost any circumstance next week is interesting, right? If one of the queens accidentally wins HOH because they're all planning on throwing it, all three of them, that's really interesting because they're going to have to show their cards in some way, which is why they're all trying to throw it, because they're basically aligned with everybody. If one of the three kings that I just mentioned wins, we're going to get this situation here where they're going to be trying to target Hannah, but the rest of their supposedly majority alliance, through the influence of the cookout, is going to actually be trying to protect Hannah and vote out Whitney instead, so that's going to create a schism in this alliance. If one of the Jokers happens to somehow win, they're going to likely target Christian and Alyssa, and the kings are going to expect some sort of level of protection from their Royal Flush Alliance, and it's going to be very interesting to see if the queens stick their neck out anyway. They will not. And again, that could put a schism in this alliance, right? And then if somebody like Whitney or Hannah win a similar situation, if any of those five win, we're likely to see Christian and Alyssa on the block. We're likely to see the Royal Flush Alliance kind of collapse a little bit. So actually, the majority of instances of next week result in this Royal Flush Alliance completely falling apart. Which will be the third majority in a row. One week after the other, they just completely fall apart.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Can't really predict it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that I have a pretty good idea of what might happen, like on the surface, given most HOH outcomes. But I think that pretty much all of them are going to result in some kind of very interesting fallout, and the fallout that occurs is going to be very messy and kind of unpredictable. So either way, I think we're getting an interesting week 4. And, you know, as I said, they're also already planning for week 5 because this is the reason why Kylan and Tiffany want to protect Whitney this week. So, yeah, any thoughts?
Is the team twist going to be over after week 4?
Yes.
Do we know that?
Week 4 is the last week of the team twist. That is confirmed. So,
okay.
Week 5, the HOH will be able to nominate anybody, and no more wild card.
Okay. All right. So yeah, get through this week, and I think Kylan and Tiff shows they could run it.
Yeah, I mean, they have to get through next week. Next week is going to be a big test for if they can maintain control of what's likely to be a very chaotic situation, no matter what. But yeah, if so, I would definitely say that one of the two of them is looking to be the likely winner of the season. So, but this is very early still, and there's still a lot of game to be played, and there's a lot of very good players in this season. So,
yeah, it's way too early to really say anything.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, Brian, Chad?
Nope. Just
You wrap it up.
Yeah. I don't think Brent will be too missed by the online audience from what I've seen, so
yeah,
they'll be quite happy with this outcome.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun Thursday night eviction, fun blindside probably, and then next week will probably be even more fun chaos. So, yeah, we're looking like the full speed ahead for the season. All right.
Pretty good so far.
Yeah, definitely one of the better seasons in recent memory so far. So where can we find you guys online here as we sign off?
Yeah, you can find me Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ChadPerry25, should be right here, and on Instagram at ChadleyJP.
You can find me on Twitter at @theFakeBMar. That's BMARR. Yeah, I post mostly about Big Brother and sports and a joke every now and then. And yeah.
Yeah,
That's about it for me.
For sure. And you can find me on Twitter at Ben Sharon, BENSHARRON, where I tweet about all kinds of stuff, including Big Brother Madness. You can follow the main channel at Wicked Get Everything on YouTube, Twitch, on Twitter at WG Everything, on Facebook at Wicked Get Everything, on TikTok at Wicked Get Everything, on any other platform I didn't mention, Instagram at Wicked Get Everything. You can subscribe to this channel, Better Radio. We're closing in on 100 subscribers. If we get to 100, we can get a custom URL and more easily promote our stuff. You can find the Have Not Room here on YouTube or on any of the major podcasting networks in the audio version. And with that, we will sign off, and we will see you next week for hopefully some very interesting stuff to talk about.